March 24th, 1998. A typical early spring Tuesday, warm and sunny. What would start out as a normal day would turn tragic around 12:30 p.m. as two students, Mitchell Johnson, 13, and Andrew Golden, 11, fatally shot 4 students and a teacher with multiple weapons and wounding 10 others. Early this year marked the 25th anniversary of this tragedy that shook the community of Jonesboro, Arkansas, and surrounding towns. We were in middle school ourselves in a town about an hour away. This would be the first time we ever heard about a school shooting. It seemed unfathomable. Of course, it wasn't the first one, and unfortunately, it wouldn't be the last. How could this have happened?
Andrew Golden was one of the shooters. He was 11 when it happened. From what we've learned about him, he was just a normal kid. His parents worked at the post office. Occasionally, he would have to go home. And his family was pretty big into hunting from what we saw. But that is not justification for him to do what he did. During his deposition, he showed no emotion and little remorse. There was an incident with a girl where he had actually shot a pop gun and hit her in the face, and he was disciplined by his parents. He wasn't in trouble a lot, but when he did, his parents were involved, like a normal childhood, as far as we could tell.
Yeah, there wasn't too much online about him. The information that I learned from Mitchell Johnson, who was born August 11th of 1984, I actually gathered most of it from watching his deposition. So he comes from a broken home. I think he was actually raised in Minnesota. His parents divorced when he was about 8 or 9. Then he moved to Kentucky with his mom for a bit, and then they found themselves in Jonesboro about 2 years before the incident. So he said that he didn't ever get in trouble in school up until about the 5th grade, and that's when he started getting in trouble. Mainly for fighting. He did get suspended for fighting on the playground on the last day of school, 5th grade. In 6th grade, he was suspended for 2 days for fighting. In 7th grade, he got ISS for wearing a hat at school. And the teacher, I guess, protocol was, like, if you break the rules, like, they take it from you, which, I mean, they did that when we were in school, too. Well, he refused to give his hat. He, like, tucked it up under his arm and wouldn't give it to her and was just very defiant. And so he got ISS. And then I guess when he was in ISS, he was journaling or something. And they had referenced the letter during the deposition. And I guess in the note, he was referencing hating 2 teachers. Ironically, he couldn't read his own handwriting, so he couldn't tell us who the teachers were, and he didn't remember a lot, of course. But he referenced wanting to hurt them. And they thought the letter said that he was talking about a killing squad, but he said he was talking about killing squirrels, so who knows. But he said that he had a pellet gun and he wasn't afraid to use it. He did cuss out a teacher and a student, and he got in trouble for that as well. He did admit to being a self-mutilator. He would cut, I guess someone had saw something on his left arm. His football coach told him, you shouldn't be doing that, and if you continue to do it, you're going to get kicked off the team. So he did end up getting kicked off the football team. But he participated in sports, choir, and even went to a Baptist church regularly. I think some people were kind of shocked by this. They acted like he was, a good, respectable kid, whereas other people noticed that he was more of a bully. And he also would go up to Minnesota for the summers and spend time with his dad. And so he was telling kids back in Arkansas that he was part of the Bloods gang and that he had done heroin and he had done marijuana. During his deposition, he said he knows what heroin is, but he didn't do it. But I guess he said that he had smoked weed 3 times and got drunk once or twice. But he was trying to paint this picture of really a good kid that didn't do anything bad. It was later found out that when he was in Minnesota, he actually had allegations against him for SAing a 3-year-old. And then I guess those charges were dropped, at least at the time of the deposition. And so Of course, during the entire time that he talked, he blamed Golden, like it was his plan, and that he didn't want to hurt anybody, and that they were just trying to scare people. To me, he didn't show any real remorse, even though he continually said that he's really sorry about what happened and he didn't mean for it to happen, and he prays for them. He wrote this letter saying that he prays for the family and the other kids.
By all accounts, the two suspects were not close friends. In fact, Johnson attended 7th grade and Golden attended the 6th grade. The students only shared bus rides to and from school, but both verbalized hostility towards others and threatened that something big was about to happen. So you had mentioned that Johnson lived with his mother and stepfather and had a very difficult relationship with his father. But Golden did have a normal childhood. He was not a disciplinary problem at the school and was regarded by many adults as a well-mannered and cheerful student. Golden led kind of a Jekyll and Hyde lifestyle. On the other side, he was known to demonstrate violence by firing his BB guns at animals and other children. His family was very interested in firearms by competing and winning marksmanship awards. Again, this doesn't signify that somebody would commit a violent crime like this, even if that is their interest. So the shooting had started the day after spring break. 5th period had just started at 12:35. The fire alarms caused the student body and faculty to evacuate the building. The alarm was triggered by the 11-year-old Golden, and shortly after activating the alarm, joined the 13-year-old Johnson in the field adjacent to the school. The location had a clear view of the exit doors during the fire drill. At 12:41, as 87 students and 9 teachers evacuated the building, Golden and Johnson began to fire at the group with various weapons, including handguns, semi-automatics, bolt-action rifles, in rapid succession. Golden and Johnson fired 30 rounds at the group. The 6th grade teacher, Shannon Wright, was killed along with 4 students: Natalie Brooks, age 11, Paige Ann Herring, age 12, Stephanie Johnson, age 12, and Brittany Varner, age 11. 9 students and other teachers were injured. Among the wounded students were Candace Porter, age 11, who reportedly dated and broke up with Johnson, and Jennifer Jacobs, age 12, who reportedly dated and broke up with Golden prior to the shooting, although some speculated that the suspect targeted specific students or teachers based upon past interactions. This theory was never proven, and the victims associated with the suspects were eventually considered coincidental. After firing upon the crowd, both of them fled through the woods and were apprehended by the police. They were discovered attempting to make their way back to the van parked almost a half a mile from the school. This van, taken from Johnson's residence, contained food, extra clothing, and camping to facilitate their escape. An investigation by the police determined that 3 handguns were taken from Golden's residence, and an additional 4 handguns and 3 rifles came from Golden's grandfather's residence. The sheriff's office assumed responsibility for the investigation of the incident and charged both suspects with 5 counts of capital murder and 10 counts of first-degree battery.
At the time that the boys committed this crime, they were 13 and 11. And in the state of Arkansas, in order to be tried as an adult, you had to be 14. Therefore, they went on trial as juveniles. They would only have to spend until they were 18 in a juvenile youth facility before they were released. However, the federal government stepped in and charged them for the guns, so they got federal charges on top of the state, and they had to serve time until they were 21. Unfortunately, when they were released, because they were juveniles, their criminal record did not go with them. So for all accounts, they had no criminal background history.
So there was another school shooting. A 15-year-old student in Stamps, which is Lafayette County, conducted a similar ambush-style attack, firing upon students from nearby woods. It's unknown whether Johnson and Golden had knowledge of the details of this attack, but the similarities in timing is remarkable.
One thing that I would like to add is that I know they said that they were not specifically targeting anybody, but the 5 that were killed were all female, and of the 10 that were wounded, only 1 was male. Now, I did read that the boys were actually in gym at that time, therefore their fire exit would have been to a different location than where the sixth grade hall was coming out at. But having known the class schedule, they would have known. I mean, this is just me speculating, but they would have known that the boys would have been away in gym and know where they would exit because they were supposed to be in school and in the gym, you know. So, although they say it wasn't targeted, I just find that to be like a really weird coincidence.
I agree. When this event unfolded, the Westside Middle School was national and international spotlight for the concern about the growing numbers of school shootings during the 90s. The enormity influx of media personnel added tension to the residents' population's ability to heal from the event.
Well, and we've been over to Jonesboro before. You know, where we lived was actually smaller than Jonesboro, and I think at the time they had about 51,000 people, but it was in the Bible Belt of the South with a lot of country land, a lot of, you know, country folk living, you know, just simple lives. Not everybody, but you know what I mean? Like back then it was like going hunting and all that was normal, you know, like we knew tons of friends who went hunting, you know what I mean?
Our school would literally be closed on the first day of hunting season because so many boys would be absent.
Yeah, they weren't coming to school because they were going to be out. And I don't remember having this, but you had...
Yes. I had hunter's education in middle school. It was part of our physical education where we learned firearm safety, and we even had to like take a test, and we got a little card stating that we took the course and we could keep that with us if we wanted to go hunting. I did not, but everyone in middle school went through that course.
And I believe we're just one county over from this. I remember being at school, you know, we didn't watch the news or anything as kids.
Yeah.
But I remember being at school, like, in the days after, and, you know, they're talking about it at school, and it just seemed, like, so crazy. You know what I mean? I'm like, what? Like, how could this happen? So even though, like, we weren't directly in the area, I feel like it even affected our community, like, in our way. And I believe shortly after that they put metal detectors in at the school, at the high school for sure, but I'm not sure if in any of the other schools.
Yeah, just the Jonesboro shooting was a tragic event that led to significant discussions about gun control, school safety, and the treatment of juvenile offenders within the United States. Since both of them were released when they were 21, after serving their sentences, both of them faced legal troubles later in life. Unfortunately, Golden's life was cut short in a tragic car accident, but before that, he had lied on a application to get a gun, and in his 2008 deposition was confronted by lying about it, and he still just played dumb. That's the only way I can explain it. Just that I don't know. I don't remember. I don't recall. He'd even changed his name when he'd gotten out to Drew Grant.
Yeah, I believe so. It was like Drew Douglas Grant, I think is what I believe he changed his name to. I feel like both of the boys like played dumb a lot. They did the deposition in the original, like in 2000, right? Like it happened in 98, but I don't think that they actually like were deposed and all that till later. And
I think
then 2000, and then in was it 07, 08 when they were deposed again? Yeah. And as far as a motive goes, it just says revenge or anger, you know, or the things that are popping up online because, like during Johnson's deposition, he just kept saying, I don't know why I did this. If I realize or find out, I'll let you know, but I have no idea. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it was clearly planned. They had been talking about it. I know during the deposition, Johnson said that they had spoke about it at Christmas and then over spring break, like the Friday of the end of spring break, which would have been the Friday before the Tuesday. He had stayed the night with a friend and had warned that friend not to come to school because he feels like something bad might happen. And then again on Monday, he told another friend that he didn't want to be hurt that she should stay home from school the next day because he felt like something bad was going to happen. And so Johnson did say definitively they knew it was going to happen like the Monday before, and he went home and he took out all of his books out of his backpack, threw them in a drawer, packed his backpack with clothes, and then the next morning they both intentionally were late for catching the bus so that they weren't on the bus, and that's how they were able to get the van and then plan out everything else, like carry out everything else.
It is speculated that school bullying could be a factor, but again, even they said they don't know why they did this, which is actually very scary.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it was thought out, it was planned, supposedly with no motive. Like, did they just want to hurt people?
I know, that's a very good question. Like, Johnson kept referencing, like, all their problems they had, and they were mad at the world, and their intentions were to scare people, and they just wanted to run away. And I guess they were going to live on the lam. You know, they had the van packed up with their food and their camping gear and some tools, and apparently, like, an enormous amount of ammunition.
Oh, my God.
And so, I guess their plan was to run away. And supposedly, during the deposition, Johnson, I guess when they were running off, you know, they're back behind the woods after they're doing the shooting and they run off. I guess at that point, Golden stopped. Like, he was too tired, he couldn't keep running. And Johnson, like, put his gun up to his head and said, "You're going to keep going because you got me into this, you're going to get me out of this." And then I guess they take off running again, and then they were apprehended shortly after that. I was trying to see if our laws have changed. One thing I had read was that they can be charged as adults at a younger age if it was proven to be premeditated and they know the difference between right and wrong.
So after they were both released from the sentence, we already discussed that Golden got in trouble for trying to get a gun permit, and then Johnson seemed to have a lot more run-ins with the police, I believe.
He did, and ironically, he lived up in northwest Arkansas during this time, and that's where we have moved as well. And at the time when he first was released, during the deposition, when he said the address, when I was watching the one from 2007 and he gave the address of where he was, I was like, oh my God, that's where we lived. We lived right over there. So, like, I pulled up a map and it was like a block over. And when he did get out, I guess he had Johnson had paired up with a guy he had met in the youth house or whatever, the Alexander Youth Services place when he was a juvenile. And that kid, his last name was Trammell. He was in because he had killed his dad with a crossbow in 1999. And so they were both up here in our area, rooming like just a block over from where we were. Johnson actually worked at a gas station that we would stop at all the time.
Yeah.
He actually was stopped there. He originally got stopped in a traffic stop and had some drugs and a gun, so he got charges for that. And then he was on suspicion of theft, like trying to commit fraud. And what had happened, I guess someone had left a credit card at the gas station he was working at. He took it, bought a meal at Burger King, and so then he ended up with theft charges. And federal did come in on the gun charges, because I guess you can get more charges on the guns if you are using drugs or addicted to drugs. And so they were able to charge him with the gun charges as someone who was using drugs. And so it was like a heftier sentence. And so he ended up getting like a total of 18 years between all of those charges. And in 2009, so Johnson is serving a federal sentence, and he will likely remain incarcerated well into his 30s.
The question is should they have been tried as adults?
I mean, what we know now, yes. I mean, not trying to make an excuse for the 90s, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And also, like, nothing like that had ever happened, particularly in our area. And I feel like, unfortunately, crimes like these committed by juveniles have been on the rise, you know, since we were kids. But I think there wasn't like a lot known about how to prosecute juveniles.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? the thought of like sentencing an 11-year-old though, I mean, I saw, and obviously in their depositions it was like what, almost 2 years later, so they were a little bit older, but like thinking about a little 11-year-old and them being in a prison, you know what I mean? I don't know, that seems unfathomable, but I mean, I think they should have been able to get more time than that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And not just automatically released. They should have been, you know,
like
seen by psychologists or doctors for mental health, or even to see if they were at risk of recommitting the crimes. The fact that Golden did not seem remorseful really at all and was still not accepting responsibilities for his part that he played is pretty telling, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And like some kind of halfway home or something, you know, it's kind of like, oh, you've done your time, we're gonna wipe our hands of you, you out, you know, like just turn them loose into the wild. They're like, they're adults now, they've been locked up their entire life, like they don't even know how the real world works out there. And luckily they hadn't like committed any kind of like heinous crimes like this after the fact, but I mean, Johnson was caught with marijuana and loaded guns, you know, so
when they know they're not allowed to. That's the thing though, they obviously know they're not allowed to have firearms, and both of them try to obtain them, whether legally or illegally.
Well, and that was just it was like at the very beginning of 07 when Johnson started first getting caught with things. He had only been released a little over a year before that. So he just hadn't been caught doing anything, I feel like, for that. Because he was released on his 21st birthday on August 11th of 05. And then January 1st of 07, he's getting arrested, you know.
Yeah. I didn't really come across Golden getting in any trouble besides the trying to obtain weapons.
And he lied on the application, right?
Yes.
Was the biggest thing.
Oh, he lied quite a bit on the application about his addresses and everything.
And his history. And was he using his, like, new changed name, I guess? Yeah. But, I mean, I've never filled out an application to own a gun, but don't you have to list, like, maiden names and aliases and stuff?
Yeah. And they do a very thorough background check. So your social security number, doesn't matter what your name is.
And they fingerprinted him, right? Like, is that how they found out who he really was?
I think so.
As far as like, that was the only thing I had read about him since he was released, and then his passing in 2019. After this terrible incident happened, they did set up a memorial garden. It's actually near the school. It's called the Westside Memorial Garden in honor of the 5 victims. I believe they have like 5 picnic tables and 5 like the plaques with their information, you know, to honor them. And, you know, even 25 years later, like I was watching interviews and it still affects the community greatly.
I came across an article that Johnson had said that he continues to deal with the results when he was, you know, before he went back to jail.
Yeah.
So after he was released, saying in his 2007 deposition that he had received death threats and was fired from a few jobs in Northwest Arkansas because of his, you know, past, which can't say that I blame him.
I mean, nobody should get death threats, but I mean,
I wouldn't I would not chance that.
No, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I get why people would do it, you know what I mean? A lot of people felt like they got off easy. They got off easy. And I agree, you know, I believe they did as well. Have y'all heard about this? You know, honestly, we had kind of forgotten about it for a while, you know? And because we were so young when it happened, like, we didn't even know all the details until we started digging around. So let us know if you've heard about this.
I don't remember anything, because, you know, maybe our school talked to us a little bit about safety. And I know the junior high school, they started implementing badges, IDs, and, you know, and then eventually they did put in metal detectors and had a resource officer on the property.
This case was incredibly heartbreaking. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all of those that lost their lives and were affected by this tragedy.
That brings us to the end of today's story.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing and turn on notifications for future videos. Until next time, stay safe.